Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is Jones. Report is for the 16th, and well, we had a Ferragosto here, which is the traditional Italian holiday of the beginning of holidays. Everybody just leaves the city, heads for the beach. So we've achieved that time. Everything shuts down, and it's a big party. So not an American thing. I think the closest would be 4th of July weekend or Memorial Day weekend. Anyway, the market started its little climb up. We knew we were in just a little bit of a positive push with the magenta, but we still had MBI white leading, and we were right at the crossroads of the meeting of cyan and green, and clearly the rejection started early on in the day. It was pretty clean. We saw it in the pre-market, and it just accelerated all the way through. And the concern was is that you should be able to hold support relatively decent, and we pretty much stayed in the same range because we were talking about that with the orange DOC and that setup, and sure enough, it did. But um, complete fillback of the breakout that took place, which is not uncommon when you break into a new 100% push through and then come right back to it. And so I think that all filled everything pretty much within line. We're starting to see some more negative data increasing, but along with that, we've had the rise in oil prices. So it's really been a challenge to justify uh, pushing things higher, uh, particularly since now we're going to see a secondary round of price increases, and uh, worldwide things looking pretty soft at this particular stage. So a little bit of the case of things starting to crack, so to speak, particularly some of the evidence from U.S. real estate and commercial loans, that kind of situation. So that's all added to it. And of course, we've seen NASDAQ being the weakest element of it. And it was always going to be just a question whether the S&P would be able to hold up. It didn't do exceedingly horrible. It filled all the way back, but supported on the 38%, which when we look at the readings there, it's a little bit more positive than what we're seeing on the S&P. So there's a little bit of that transition at a critical spot right here, because you have to have orange dip below green and red here in order for there to be any kind of a buy configuration within this setup. It's so close, but a pivot back up of orange would certainly be a rejection of that, and we would have more of the same. Even with rising red and green, would be just enough to hold support. When we look at it from a treasury standpoint, recognition is that rates are not going to be improving in any way, so it's only going to be going up. And I think that recognition from the bond market is going to put additional pressure on stocks as well, because now where do you go? Can you go for the higher yield and not worry about the volatility of the market? That's a safe play. And so we could see it bounce back up. TLT would be an indication that money's being pushed and moved more towards treasuries as an allocation. Oil did soften up a bit, back down to just over the 80 handle here. And while it's some relief, it doesn't really help a whole lot, because as long as we stay over these 80 range, the longer it goes, the worse it's going to get. The reports of higher gas prices in the U.S. that have already started to increase, and it's just a matter of time before that starts to spread, because that's literally, it just takes a while. And so, you're looking at, fall period for the time that, a lot of this will start to really impact. Euro, still surprisingly high, but needless to say, has pulled back from all of the short covering that was forced into it, and now they're just going to do their best to try and hold it up in this range. I doubt they'll be able to do it for too long, because again, the yield from other locations is far better than staying in the euro. So that's going to put a capital draw. Gold, they're continuing to drive gold down into the lower portions. That's an interesting one, because we've talked about this before. The sort of unusual trade that happens with the paper version of gold in this electronic setup, and how it can keep it from accelerating. But with what we're seeing from the inflationary numbers and that, It's going to have its rebound. We just wait for that signal, and when it does, it's probably going to be pretty significant. I mean, that's a pretty decent run of extreme histograms below the red line, and no new configuration, but you are now with a negative 23 now on the red DOC, so we're at the automatic pop-up point. So you'd be looking for a little bounce towards that 23% soon. Bitcoin actually held up pretty well within the selling. It was interesting because ETH was a bit weaker, and no surprise with that because we had that spike of the NBI weight. So crypto, not a safe haven from that standpoint. And here it is from 50K. We were talking about this as we saw the pre-market starting to fade, and it went with the short on that one, and then boom, dropped all the way to the 0%, and pretty much couldn't do anything over the 23. And right now we're fighting right back to get to the 23. I got NBI red leading, so once the pivot lower on that one would certainly put a cap on any kind of upside move. So that's within the normal range. We didn't get the DOC here with the orange dip, but the question really is going to become, can the MBI magenta stay over that yellow to sustain it and potentially get it up towards the 38% move. So we'll see how that one plays out as we're moving forward. But if we look at it from a intraday standpoint, selling started early. We were talking about this in the video, and literally once it hit the bottom, as soon as the open, buyers jumped back in, and they just weren't significant, and they couldn't sustain it. And then we late day breakdown again, and all we've seen from the post market is just a lift back up to fill that late day selling. So kind of that mean reversion back and forth, exactly what we were talking about from before. Nothing significant has changed from that. I think we're still going to continue to see that sideways with the slight down pressure as we get selling into it. And welcome to the dog days. So there you have it. Long and the short of it. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk to you later.